Well, President Trump unleashing a brutal tweet storm after former top-level staffer Omarosa released secret White House recordings, one with him and another with Chief of Staff John Kelly. Here's one of them. While I know it's not presidential to take on a lowlife like Omarosa, and while I would rather not be doing so, this is a modern-day form of communication, and I know the fake news media will be working overtime to make even wacky Omarosa look legitimate as possible. Sorry. Here now to discuss former FBI Assistant Director Ron Husko, along with Direct Media Group President Beverly Hallberg and Fox News contributor Deneen Beverly. All right, Beverly, you're a messaging expert. This one right here should be like the final exam of grad school for messaging. This is a crazy one with what's gone on over the weekend with Omarosa.
Yeah, I don't think we should be surprised by the president's tweet. He's known to tweet when things have gone on. And after her interview that we saw yesterday with Chuck Todd, of course, the Today Show interview today, it's no wonder that he is responding. And I do think that Omarosa, who is the notorious villain of reality TV, is going to be the villain in this story as well, because I think the sticking point for so many people is that she secretly recorded conversations, most notably with her firing with the White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly. And what I found interesting is she says that negatively that he's the one running the White House, but that actually is part of his job description, is to run the White House. So I think all of this plays poorly for her, and I think it's also poor for mainstream media to pick up on this and think that this is going to be a credible source and a credible book about the inside of the White House. Yeah,
I mean, they dissed her for so long, and now, you know, of course, as she's turned on Trump, you know, they're walking that same thin line that they've walked several times. But, you know, one question, Deneen, some people are asking, okay, you've got quote-unquote wacky Omarosa who got fired 3 times on The Apprentice. Why did President Trump hire her again? In fact, if you go back to March of 2013, he put out a tweet, honest Omarosa, she won't backstab, she'll come at you from the front. So, I mean, all the signs were there that this one day could eventually happen.
Yeah, and the title of the book, I think, speaks for itself. I mean, she's showing how unhinged she really is. And don't forget, she had over 30 of her bridal party go to the White House to take photos.
Why do you think President Obama brought her to the White House?
President Trump.
I'm sorry, President Trump.
Yeah, I guess he thought highly of her at the time when he brought her in. I mean, they've known each other for a number of years. But see how the things have turned, the table has turned, and she's like the darling of the left now, because she's basically given them red meat to go after the president based on whatever comments that she made in her book. We don't even know if they're true.
You know, Ron, some of that red meat certainly seems to have crossed the line, and many are wondering, you know, beyond the ethical lines, if they even cross legal lines. And recording a conversation in a situation room, you know, it's your role in the FBI. If you heard news like that, what would be the next step?
Well, I think that it would do well for the FBI to open an investigation, understand how this happened. I don't know what level of security clearance she had. I assume she had at least a secret, that she was going into the White House Situation Room. That is certainly a SCIF, a sensitive compartmentalized information facility. You know, I mean, there are high expectations of your conduct in a SCIF. Communications devices should not be going in a SCIF. They're stored outside. There are signs that warn you. They are access controlled. She defied every common expectation of somebody with a clearance going into a sensitive location. It's outrageous, and I think DOJ ought to look at it.
Beverly, on that note, the media that's actually playing these recordings also, I mean, they have their own legal departments. They deal with employees and ex-employees, often asking them to sign NDAs and things like that. And yet they're helping someone violate the very agreements that they try to enforce. I mean, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's concerning for national security, and I would like to know, did they actually get these audio clips way in advance, full context, so they knew the whole conversation, or if they're just very willy-nilly playing these excerpts to get ratings? I think it's extremely concerning. I will say one reporter I want to point out here is Savannah Guthrie of the Today Show. She had a very tough interview with Omarosa, who Omarosa actually excused herself at the end of the interview and said that the time was up and she needed to move on. So that was the toughest one I had seen. Chuck Todd is very disappointed in his line of questioning. And you just have to ask yourself, why are they taking these types of tell-all books seriously, whether it's Fire and Fury by
Sure.
Michael Wolff, even the Russian dossier? None of these seem to hold weight, and you wonder if that's going to catch up with them when it comes to the perception of the average person.
And finally, I want to ask you, Deneen, a lot aside the conversation and discussion now is a lack of black people in the White House, particularly at senior levels.
Well, that should be based on a person's skill set. I can't see what the color of a person's skin has to do with what a person brings to the table. But clearly, Omarosa is a billboard example of a toxic, disgruntled former employee in the White House, and the left is only going to use her from now on.
All right. Thank you all very, very much. Really appreciate it. And we'll be right back.